The Mamasapano incident led to the suspension of the deliberations for the draft Bangsamoro Basic Law. Hopefully, the House Ad Hoc Committee on the Bangsamoro, chaired by Congressman Rufus Rodriguez, will resume its work for the proposed law on April 6 and approve it by April 16. Now, how important is the bill's approval, not just for the core territories, but to the entire country, especially in the Cordilleras, which is also hoping for autonomy in the future? And joining us tonight is Congressman Teodoro Baguilat of Ifugao, home to the world's famous Ifugao rice terraces. Good evening, sir, and welcome to NewsLife.
Good evening, Robert.
Now, sir, after the Mamasapano incident, now what is the consensus or the general sentiments of the House now with regards to the BBL?
Well, right now, more than a month has passed since Mamasapano, and definitely the emotions have died down a little, no? And there is now a consensus for us to fast-track the deliberations so we can proceed and move on in discussing the proposed BBL, not just on the committee level, but bringing it in the plenary for the discussions. No? And to us, we believe that, at least with my party, with the Liberal Party, we have the numbers to support the passage of the Basic Bangsamoro Law.
So there is still solid support for the President's commitment to end the 42-year conflict?
Yes. Now, we discussed about this in a meeting with the Liberals this morning, and after that, we came out with a statement led by Deputy Speaker Balindong, supporting the speedy deliberations and hopefully the passage of Basic Bangsamoro Law.
Now, how important is the approval of the BBL?
For us, well, at least I can speak as Cordilleran, and in the Constitution, it states that there will be two autonomous regions, one in Muslim Mindanao and one in the Cordilleras. No? So for us, we feel that it's important that we finish discussing the Bangsamoro region, and from there we move on to tackling also the desire of the Cordillerans to have an autonomous region in the Cordillera. Now, of course, twice there have been attempts in the Cordilleras to pass an autonomous region, but it has failed. Not because the Cordillerans didn't want autonomy, perhaps, but because there was lack of time to have a strong and decent information dissemination campaign. Now, because the BBL is now in the limelight, everybody's discussing about it, not just in Mindanao, but also in the Cordilleras, then at least now more Cordillerans will be aware what autonomy is really about. And that is something that will help us in trying to move forward in also passing an autonomous region in the Cordillera.
Now, with this unfortunate incident in Mamasapano, the BBL now is being highly scrutinized, not only in Congress, Senate, but also by the public. Now, how can we ensure now that if this BBL will be actually passed, it's not passed just for the sake of it being passed, but actually going through the actual rigorous process to make sure that it will be implemented properly?
Well, I think if Mamasapano didn't happen, we would have less passionate discussions on the BBL. I think the consensus in the House and even the public is BBL is good because it is a possible instrument for peace. Now, Mamasapano happened. But that doesn't change the reasons why we are pushing for the BBL in Mindanao, which is we want to give peace a chance in that strife-torn region, because Mindanao has always been rooted as a region of promise, with a lot of resources. It's a beautiful place. There are many. There's tourism potential, and we feel that with Basic Bangsamoro Law, we can finally attain the realization of a lot of the dreams of the Mindanaoans for development in that area. Unfortunately, Mamasapano happened. So now the issue actually is we still want peace, but the issue is a trust issue. Do we now trust the MILF? Siyempre, yun yung mga pangamba. The BBL is an output of a peace agreement between the government and the MILF. So the trust issue is always there. And that's the reason why I think there are still some of our colleagues, not the majority, some of our colleagues would still want to continue with the investigations sa Mamasapano. But I think the overall sentiment right now in Congress is let's move on. In a way, the Board of Inquiry has already released its report. Many are accepting that report. They feel it's objective. They trust that the administration, the president, will fulfill its promise that justice will be served to the fallen 44. But right now, the most important task is to make sure that we will give peace a chance and that this administration will leave a legacy of peace via BBL.
Now, having said all that, all the issues, the trust issues, and also emotions are very high. Now, on the part of Congress, how do you deal with it now in terms of moving on in scrutinizing now the Bangsamoro Basic Law to ensure that everything's in place? Are you looking at it now and seeing if you want to change anything within that basic law, or adding or leaving out some of the things? What happens now?
Well, first of all, I think the ad hoc committee is making its a correct decision of resuming the deliberations. Now, what Mama Sapano has done is to involve many of the congressmen in really studying the proposed draft. Because initially, most of those who participated in these discussions are understandably from Mindanao. Pero yung mga taga Manila, as in Northern Luzon, our sense was we wanted peace, but we weren't acquainted with the draft basic Bangsamoro law. Now, because of what happened, and it's becoming more challenging to pass this, we are now really studying the provisions of the BBL. There have been study groups formed in Congress among leaders and representatives of various regions to look into the provisions being discussed in the ad hoc committee. I'm not a member of the ad hoc committee, but at least I've sat in the study groups, and now I'm beginning to understand more what BBL is all about.
But how do you deal with the trust issues looming over the BBL?
Well, that is something that, we do hope that the MILF also will reciprocate by giving reasons for the public, for Congress to say, okay, we didn't want what happened, but we are willing to still go on with the process. And part of it, I think, is for the MILF to also understand that not 100% of the draft that was presented in Congress would be approved in toto. I'm sure they are politically realistic that they will not be able to get everything that they want. But what we're trying to assure us who are pushing for the passage of the basic Bangsamoro law is that the final output would be, in essence, conforming to the comprehensive agreement on the basic on Bangsamoro. It's now just a matter of perhaps looking at the language, just to make clarifications on the constitutional issues, because there are a lot of issues that were raised on the constitutionality of the provisions. And so what we are doing now is to study whether there's a need to tweak a little bit some phrases, some definitions, but still not deviating from the essence of the comprehensive agreement. That is something that we would like to assure also the MILF.
Now, looking now at the other aspect you were mentioning a while ago, being a congressman from the Cordilleras, how important now is the passage of the BBL in terms of, as history sees it, before the Cordilleras was trying to pass a bill also trying to gain its autonomy. Now, how important is this? And will you act, whether the BBL is passed or not, will you try to push for a third try?
Actually, we filed the bill for the autonomy in Cordilleras earlier than the basic Bangsamoro law. Ours has been also a historical struggle. I think the reasons why we are fighting for autonomy in the Cordillera is more or less the same with the reasons why the Muslims and the Lumads in Mindanao are also struggling for autonomy. We have been discriminated, we have been exploited, there is underdevelopment in the Cordilleras, and we feel that through autonomy we will achieve development, and at the same time to continue the peace that we have already achieved in the Cordilleras. Now, unfortunately, the focus is on Bangsamoro. That is understandable. passing an autonomous region takes a lot of political capital, takes a lot of political will. And it's so happened that the president has prioritized Bangsamoro region mainly because of the peace agreement with MILF. No? Sa Cordillera naman kasi is walang region-wide digmaan. No? Wala kaming mga rebel forces, or Cordilleran rebel forces. But we are also trying to convince the president that the need for an autonomous region in the Cordillera is also present. No? Now, the thing is, if we proceed with the Bangsamoro, if it passes, then at least we now have a model of where we can also base discussion on the autonomous setup in the Cordillera. No? We'll have the Bangsamoro region. No? Whatever subsidies or arrangements in terms of exclusive powers given to the Bangsamoro region could also be discussed, no? Or maybe something that we could also fight for in the Cordilleras. No?
Having said that, Congressman, now, finally, now for the next house, how do we ensure now the general public that as we go through the process of scrutinizing the BBL before it is passed, that everything will be done with cool heads in mind, with not too high emotions, but everything in place so that it will actually be passed and implemented in the right way?
You know, I think with Mama Sapano, the emotions will still be there. No? Especially for us Cordillerans, because many of those who were killed were Cordillerans. But I always tell my province mates and my kababayans in the Cordillera, by giving peace a chance, then perhaps we will have less people from the Cordillerans, soldiers and policemen killed miles away from the Cordilleras, because it is accepted that many of our elite forces come from the north. So I'm telling them that what do we want? Do we want peace or do we want war? We want justice, of course. No? But justice can also be achieved through peace, not through all-out war. And by doing so, by giving BBL a chance, perhaps we can have less Cordillerans killed in the battlefield or sacrificing their lives miles away from their region. And hopefully, eventually, we'll also have our own autonomous region in the Cordilleras. So I think that's my messaging for the Cordilleran people. As to the Filipino nation as a whole, it's really the peace.
Well, we do all hope that peace happens not only in Mindanao, but also, as you said, in the Cordilleras. And on that note, thank you very much for joining us here tonight at NewsLife. That was Congressman Teodoro Baguilat of Ifugao, Chairman of the House Committee on Agrarian Reform. Thank you, sir.